Hey guys, enjoy the viewing.
Raindrops hammered like desperate fingers against my apartment windows, a relentless percussion that matched the rhythm of my own thundering pulse. The fluorescent glow of my laptop cast sickly shadows across the kitchen, illuminating half-eaten takeout and the growing darkness outside. Silence shattered. A knock. Clean. Sharp. Surgical. Not the soft hesitation of a neighbor. Not the fumbling touch of a friend. This was deliberate. Precise. Chopsticks suspended between porcelain and mouth. Something ancient and primal crawled up my spine. That instinctive warning humans carry from generations of surviving the unknown. Another knock. Harder. Like something trying to break through, not just announce its presence. My fingers trembled as I approached the door. The peephole revealed nothing but inky blackness, rain streaking like phantom tears across the distorted lens. Wind whispered secrets just beyond my understanding. Then the footsteps began. Not walking. Stalking. That sounds organic. Something dragging against concrete and rain-soaked asphalt. Approaching from the side of the building where my kitchen window faced the alleyway. I shouldn't look. Every horror movie, every survival instinct screamed, "Do not look." I looked. A figure stood motionless, wrapped in a raincoat so dark it seemed to absorb the surrounding shadows. No movement, no breathing, just presence. Slowly, impossibly slowly, the head turned. Not like a human turns, like something learning how humans move. Mechanical, studying, calculating, where a face should be. Nothing. Smooth skin stretched across a blank canvas. No features. No humanity. The hand that pressed against the window wasn't a hand. It was something else. Something that understood the shape of a hand, but hadn't quite mastered the details. My phone forgotten. My breath caught in my throat. The figure knew. It had always known. It wasn't trying to enter. It was waiting, watching, learning. The rain continued to fall. Darkness bleeds into the forest like ink spreading across paper. Our campfire shrinks, a pathetic ember fighting against an ocean of shadows that breathe and pulse with something older than memory. Chuck pretends to be brave. His laugh rings hollow, ricocheting between ancient trunks that seem to lean closer with each passing moment. We're insects here, intruders. The forest knows. First, it's just a breath. A whisper so soft it could be wind, could be imagination. But it has weight, texture, something watching from spaces between branches, from depths beneath rotting leaves. Mark freezes mid-sentence, his beer bottle suspended, fingers trembling. "You hear that?" he mumbles. No crickets, no owl calls, just silence with teeth. The voice comes again, not from a direction, from everywhere. "Why are you here?" Words that aren't words. Sounds that slip between understanding and nightmare. Chuck's flashlight cuts through darkness, a fragile weapon against something fundamentally wrong. Between two trees, a figure. Not human. Never human. Touché d'impossible. Limbs at angles that hurt to comprehend. Skin like bark. Eyes that reflect nothing. We scatter like prey. Roots reach up to catch our feet. Branches claw. The forest is alive. Hungry. Tarituriao. Whispers grow. Angry. Desperate. You cannot leave. We are not welcome. We are infection. We are wrong. The car becomes sanctuary. Chuck's hands shake on the steering wheel. Miles pass before we breathe. But something came with us. Something always comes with us. Silence breathes differently in a new apartment. Each creak echoes with potential, promise or threat, depending on how the night decides to unfold. My sanctuary quickly became a cage of uncertainty. Moonlight sliced through thin curtains, cutting shadows that moved when I wasn't looking directly. The building exhaled. Walls remembered stories I couldn't hear. The first sound was soft, a whisper of fabric against hardwood, something sliding, not walking but drifting between rooms. I knew the upstairs tenant was gone. The empty parking spot below was my only witness. She materialized where hallway meets kitchen. Not walked, materialized, dressed in a gown that seemed woven from winter's first frost, hair tangled like roots pulled from dark earth. Her face, a blank canvas waiting for something terrible to be painted. When she smiled, reality bent. Her feet never touched the ground. Movement like a memory half remembered. Eyes that reflected nothing. Not emptiness, but something hungrier. Something watching. Learning. The landlord's story later meant nothing. Missing weeks, he muttered. Obsessed. Clinical words that couldn't capture the wrongness I'd witnessed. She wasn't lost. She was hunting. And hunting requires patience. I changed the locks. Installed extra bolts. Checked corners compulsively. But some visitors don't need keys. Some visitors slip through walls like smoke, like memory, like breath. Some visitors are waiting. Always waiting. Dinner dies the moment they arrive. Not with violence. With something worse. The man moves like borrowed skin. Too careful. Too deliberate. His eyes map our little house. Not seeing, but cataloging. Memorizing escape routes. Weak points. The woman follows. Pale. Bloodless. Carrying something wrapped tight beneath layers of fabric. Her gaze cuts through walls, through flesh, searching for something older than our fragile reality. We've been looking, she whispers. Not a question, a statement of fact. Mark lunges. Useless. The man doesn't even breathe differently. Something shifts in the room. Gravity bends. Shadows stretch beyond natural limits. The wrench emerges. Rust dark. Waiting. Lisa's fingers dig into my arm. We run. Darkness swallows us whole. Behind us, silence. The kind of silence that remembers. When police arrive, the house stands pristine. No trace. No evidence. But some spaces remember. Some spaces wait. And waiting requires patience. I'll revise the story to make it more human-centric, intensifying the narrative and avoiding AI-typical phrasing. Here's a reimagined version. The water lay flat as a mirror, catching the last bruised light of dusk over Parsonfield's hidden lake. I know every inch of this place, every submerged log, every reed-choked bank. Fishing here isn't just a hobby, it's breathing. My grandfather's old rod in my hands, worn smooth from decades of use, feels like an extension of my own muscle and memory. As twilight bled into darkness, something broke the lake's perfect stillness. A splash, metal clanging. Out here, sound travels like a scream. I turned, kayak rocking beneath me. A figure hunched by the shoreline, wrestling with something large, a barrel. Dark liquid spilled from its mouth, spreading across the water like a wound. Blood? No, couldn't be. But something visceral twisted in my gut. Hey, my voice cracked, sharp against the evening's silence. The figure snapped upright. A silhouette. Familiar, yet wrong. Before I could blink, he vanished into the tree line, leaving behind the barrel and a growing stain on the water's surface. Something had changed. The forest wasn't just trees anymore. It was watching. When I dragged my kayak on ashore, the woods felt different. Alive. Breathing. Each shadow seemed to pulse with a hidden heartbeat. My hands trembled as I secured the kayak's cover, ears straining for the slightest sound. A whisper of movement, a twig snapping. Then, that sound, a click, not once but twice, from different directions, like something was circling me, playing a sick game of cat and mouse. I gripped my cooler like a weapon, knowing how pathetic that was. Show yourself? The words hung in the air, impotent. And there he was, the man from the shore, pale face split by a grin that wasn't human, a finger pressed against thin lips. Click. I ran. Roots tried to trip me. Branches clawed. The forest itself seemed to conspire, funneling me forward while something followed. Always just behind. Always clicking. My house burst into view, sanctuary. I slammed the door, locked it, pressed my back against cold wood. Breathing hard. Outside, nothing moved, but I knew something was waiting. The revision focuses on more visceral, immediate language, heightening the sense of personal threat and psychological tension. I've stripped away some of the more descriptive passages to create a more intense, immediate narrative that feels more like a lived experience than a detached observation. The language is more muscular, with shorter sentences and a more direct emotional core. The summer's breath choked the house, stifling, thick with secrets. Dad's girlfriend Kathy moved through our home like a knife, all sharp edges hidden behind a smile that never reached her eyes. I watched her, always. That day, I caught her slipping out of Jake's room. 10 years old, my little brother, vulnerable, her lips stretched wide, too wide, a grotesque imitation of warmth. Just checking the window, she chirped. But the window was locked, always locked. Something was wrong. Nights blurred together. Dad, broken since Mom died, saw only his own loneliness. Give her a chance, he'd plead. But I saw beneath Kathy's skin, saw the rage bubbling just under her perfect surface. Scotty's scream shattered everything. I found her in the kitchen, my 2-year-old brother strapped into his high chair, terror etched across his face. Kathy's hands were fists, her smile gone. "Shut up," she hissed, pure venom dripping from each word. I didn't hesitate. "Get away from him." Her mask slipped. No more fake sweetness, just cold, predatory hatred. "Don't tell your dad," she warned, that terrible smile snapping back in a place like a trap. Dad wouldn't listen, couldn't listen. His grief made him blind. Then came the night I woke to my bedroom door creaking open. A shadow, silent, watching. My breath caught in my throat. When I whispered her name, nothing answered. I knew then we were never safe. The house felt different, smaller, darker. With every passing hour, Kathy's presence grew, a cancer spreading through our home, consuming everything. I protect my brothers, whatever it took, because some monsters were human skin, and they're always closest to home. The revision strips away excessive description, focusing instead on raw emotional intensity. It uses shorter, more visceral sentences that capture the narrator's growing dread and protective instinct. The language is more immediate, more personal, less about describing events and more about experiencing them. The core themes of threat, family vulnerability, and psychological tension remain intact, but delivered with a more urgent, breathless narrative voice. The condo in Fort Lauderdale is my winter escape, a second-floor hideaway where I work remotely and unwind. Nights here are usually quiet, with the sea breeze whispering through the palms and the distant hum of traffic. But tonight something feels off. The air is thick with unease, and I can't tell if it's the muggy Florida heat or something worse. I'm on the balcony, legs kicked up on the railing, my laptop open but forgotten. It's past 10 p.m., and the streets below are a patchwork of shadows. That's when I hear it, a sharp voice cutting through the stillness. Duh. At first, I don't react. Maybe it's just someone talking to a friend. But then it comes again, louder this time. Hey, you up there? My pulse jumps. Someone is calling out to me. I lean over the railing and see a man standing in the parking lot, looking directly up at me. He's older than I first thought, dressed in a tank top and a backwards cap, his grin too wide, too eager. Yeah, you, he says, his voice carrying easily through the night air. What do you want? I call down, trying to sound casual, but my voice trembles. Come down here, he replies, his grin stretching even wider. I want to show you something real cool. His words are coded in something sinister, and a cold shiver runs down my spine. I shake my head, muttering something about being busy, and step back inside, locking the sliding door behind me. But as I retreat into the safety of my condo, I hear him shout, his voice venomous now. I'm going to skin you alive. You prick. The threat hangs in the air, and I feel my stomach twist. I peek through the blinds, half expecting him to still be standing there, but the lot is empty. Trying to shake off the fear, I tell myself he's just some drunk, harmless loser. Still, I double-check the locks on the door and slide my laptop onto the kitchen counter, my hands trembling. I just started to breathe again when a sudden, violent pounding explodes against my front door. It's him, the same man, slamming his fists so hard that the entire doorframe shudders. Come out here, you coward, he roars, the rage in his voice raw and unhinged. I freeze, every muscle in my body going rigid. I'm calling the cops. I yell back, but it doesn't faze him. The pounding doesn't stop. If anything, it becomes more erratic, as if he's trying to break the door down. My hands scramble for my phone, and I punch in 911, whispering my address to the dispatcher, who promises someone will be on the way. Then the pounding changes. It turns into a scraping noise, metal against wood, like he's stabbing at the door with something sharp. My imagination conjures visions of a knife, of him bursting in with a crazed look in his eyes. The terror grips me so tightly I can't breathe. I press my back against the wall, heart racing, praying for the sirens to come. Just when I think I can't take another second, there's one final slam, a parting shot, accompanied by a furious curse, and then silence. I creep to the peephole, peering out, and see nothing. The man is gone, and the only proof he was ever there are the deep gouges in the wood and the way my hands still shake. Phone clutched to my ear. The police arrive, lights flashing, but there's no trace of him. They ask me questions I can't answer, like whether he knew me, if I've made enemies here. But all I can do is shake my head, feeling vulnerable and exposed in a way I never have before. That night, I don't sleep. I sit on the couch, every light in the condo blazing, waiting for another knock, another threat from below. The door has been repaired, but the feeling of safety never comes back. And even now, I still flinch whenever I hear a voice from the street, terrified of the man who wanted to show me something cool. Midnight swallowed the house whole. Mom's absence hung like a phantom, the silence pressing against my skin. My history paper blurred before me, words bleeding into meaningless ink. Something watched, waited. Her voice cut through the quiet. I froze. The call came from downstairs, clear, sharp. Impossible. I knew her voice. This wasn't it. My phone rang. Mom's real voice, distant and grocery store muffled. Still shopping, she said. But something had called my name. The basement door loomed. Dark. Hungry. That voice again. Perfect mom sound, but wrong. Surgical in its precision. Come down. No words. No love. Just a demand. I called her number again. Confirmation. She was miles away. Whatever waited in the basement wasn't her. I wedged a chair against the basement door. Trembling. Listening. The voice didn't anger. It didn't rage. It simply waited. Patient. Knowing. You forgot to come down. When Mom returned, the basement stood empty. Ordinary. Innocent. But I knew. Something had learned her voice. And it wasn't finished. The revision strips away descriptive layers, focusing on raw, emotional experience. Short, staccato sentences create a sense of mounting dread. The language becomes more visceral, more immediate, capturing the psychological horror of an unknown presence that can perfectly mimic loved ones. The core narrative remains intact, but delivered with a more urgent, breathless intensity. Highway midnight. Empty road bleeding into darkness. Just me, the hum of tires, and something watching. 2:13 a.m. Nothing but asphalt and shadows. The first car looked desperate. Hazards blinking like a wounded animal's last signal. A man standing roadside, pale and hungry. Something in his eyes wrong. Predatory. Need help? My voice cracked. He moved wrong. Too fluid. Too eager. I felt it before I knew it. This wasn't about a broken down car. My foot hit the gas. Tires screaming. Heart hammering against my ribs. 5 miles later, impossible. He was there again. Same car. Same jacket. Same dead-eyed stare. The road twisted like a knife. No explanación. No lo di. Just pure animal terror. By the time I reached the gas station, safety felt like a lie. Fluorescent lights couldn't wash away what I'd seen. How he'd appeared. Waiting. How did he get ahead of me? Some questions don't want answers. The revision strips away descriptive excess, focusing on raw psychological tension. Short, sharp sentences create a sense of mounting dread. The language becomes more visceral, capturing the inexplicable horror of an encounter that defies rational explanation. The core narrative remains intact, but delivered with an urgent, breathless intensity that mirrors the narrator's psychological state. The wind is battering my tiny house on the edge of town, and the rain lashes against the windows with the ferocity of 1,000 tiny fists. It's a miserable night, perfect for staying in and doing nothing but listening to the storm rage outside. I'm sprawled on the couch, TV on low, a bowl of forgotten popcorn beside me. The coziness of the room doesn't reach my bones, though. Something feels off. It's then that I hear it, a faint, scratching noise. It's so subtle at first that I think it might be a trick of the storm. But when it comes again, a deliberate drag of something sharp against glass, a shiver runs down my spine. I sit up, staring at the back door. The blinds are drawn, but the scraping continues, now shifting to a rhythmic tapping, like fingernails drumming on the glass. My breath catches. It's almost 1 a.m. Who the hell will be out there in weather like this? Adrenaline spikes through me, making my limbs feel heavy and useless. I grab my phone, creeping toward the door, trying to convince myself that it's a tree branch or some loose siding. But the taps are too deliberate, too measured. I don't dare peek through the blinds. Instead, I turn off the TV, plunging the room into darkness, and tiptoe toward the front window. I peer out, hoping for some kind of clue. The streetlights are dim, blurred by sheets of rain, and the neighborhood looks empty. No cars driving by, no figures standing in the puddle-filled streets. But when I shift my gaze to the glass's reflection, I see movement behind me. My heart leaps into my throat. I whip around, but there's nothing there. Just my empty living room and the flickering shadows cast by the storm. The tapping has stopped, replaced by the low whistle of the wind. I try to breathe, to calm the thunderous beating in my chest, and tell myself it's all in my head. The storm, the shadows. I'm just spooked. But then, from the hallway leading to my bedroom, I hear the unmistakable creak of a floorboard. Someone is inside. Panic grips me, freezing me in place. The logical part of my brain screams at me to run, to grab my keys and bolt out the front door. But I can't leave without knowing. I edge closer to the hallway, each step an act of willpower. The air feels colder, and the house seems to hold its breath along with me. I stop just before the hallway, hand braced against the wall. The silence presses down, thick and suffocating. Then I hear it, another creak, this time louder. It's coming from my bedroom. I bite back a scream, clenching my jaw so hard it hurts. My phone feels slick in my sweaty grip, and I fumble to dial 911. The operator answers, but my voice is a whisper, barely audible over the blood pounding in my ears. Someone's in my house. I manage, choking on the words. They ask me where I am, if I can get out, but I can't. My legs refuse to move. I'm rooted in place, paralyzed by fear. That's when the bedroom door slowly, agonizingly, creaks open. I don't see who or what is standing in the darkness, but I can feel the presence, heavy and watching. The 911 operator is still speaking, asking if I'm safe, but I can't answer. I just stare at the door, praying it will close, that I'm imagining this. A shadow shifts. A figure steps into the faint light. It's a man dressed in dark, dripping clothes, hair plastered to his forehead. He's soaking wet, like he's been out in the storm, and yet his eyes are impossibly calm. He sees me, and a slow, unnerving smile spreads across his face. He doesn't speak, just tilts his head as if considering me. I don't think. I just run. My feet finally obey me, and I sprint out the front door into the storm, the cold rain slapping against my skin. I don't stop running, not even when I see the police lights approaching, the red and blue swirling through the sheets of rain. They search the house, of course. They find muddy footprints leading from the back door, through the hallway, and into the bedroom. But there's no sign of the man. No evidence he was ever there, besides the puddles of dirty water that pool on the hardwood floor. I stay at a friend's that night, and when I finally return home the next day, the rain has stopped, but the fear hasn't. I keep glancing at my back door, the one I found unlocked, wondering who he was and how he got in. And more importantly, if he'll come back. Because when the storm rolls in again and the wind picks up, I can't help but think about the smile he gave me and how he looked like he had all the time in the world. Don't forget to subscribe. You are the best.